Episode of Highlights. The topic under spotlight today is rights in Islam. According to the Quran, dignity of the children of Adam is a divine bestowal which is to be secured by all means, including the law and the state authorities, and is to be defended by all forces. The Quran has said, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, we have conferred dignity on the children of Adam and borne them over land and sea, and provided for them sustenance out of the good things of life, and favored them from far above most of our creations. It is the individual, social, and universal responsibility of Muslims to protect the merits and virtues of all the children of Adam, whatever their differences. With me to discuss the issue of rights in Islam is Dr. Anis Ahmad, a Muslim scholar and the Dean of Faculty of Social Sciences at the International Islamic University in Islamabad, Pakistan. Dr. Anis, welcome on Highlights.
Thank you very much.
Doctor, I'd like to start with an issue which seems to bother a lot of people. Many people say that Islam is incompatible with the notion of human rights. We, for example, hear from time to time organizations like Amnesty International complaining about the Islamic, for example, penal code. What's your opinion?
You see, when we talk about rights, then we refer usually to certain slogans which have been raised by some intellectuals. We never go into a depth study. If you look into Quran and Sunnah, you will find that Prophet, peace be upon him, in his last sermon came up with very clear statements. He talked about right to life, he talked about right to property, he talked about rights of women, he talked about right of servants and slaves, and all those aspects were emphasized by him to the extent that if you don't observe those rights, you will not be proper Muslims. If you go to Quran, we find Quran has taken a two-pronged approach. Firstly, it talks about the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That means we should not accept authorities other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I take, for example, my local customs and say, my forefathers have done it, I must do that, then I have made my customs my God. So, right of Allah is that nothing should be associated with him. He should be taken as an authority. Besides that is the right of human beings. Therefore, huququllah and huququl ibad constitute Islamic faith. If one of these wavers, then you don't have your faith complete. Allah says, in Day of Judgment, even He cannot forgive a person who has violated human rights. Therefore, the text of the Quran and prophetic statements from day one are outstanding, very clear, crisp on these issues. If you look into the Quran, for example, you will find that it begins first by saying that right to dignity and honor, right to life, right to property, right to live a reasonable and rational life, right to association, right to protest, right to share in power, right to practice one's religious liberties and culture without any kind of compulsion. Now all those things are categorically mentioned in the Quran. If the Quran says so, how can we talk about incompatibility? The whole business of human rights, as you find, goes back to 17th century, when you find some European writers coming up with the idea that they should have recognition of human rights. But here you find the Quran 15 centuries ago, in 7th century, providing people with all that which we can think even in modern time. It's very interesting that when Prophet moved to Medina, then he provided the Jewish community with certain rights, and those rights included Jewish tribes among themselves will not be discriminated. He named 10 Jewish tribes who will be treated equal to the 10 high blood Jewish tribes. Judaism at that time had a feeling that if people from the high blood have committed something, then they deserve less punishment. Of low blood and low category should have more punishment. Now he uplifted to the extent of the Jewish community, telling them, you must treat your Jews, brothers and sisters, equal. And then, with reference to defense of Medina, with reference to any kind of problems they may face, civil liberties were given to them at par with Muslims. And therefore, it will be simply lack of information about Islamic history and principles if we say it's incompatible. I don't find something more relevant in Islamic teaching to human rights.
But Doctor, you seem to be painting a very bright picture about the Islam and its teachings and how it respects human rights, civil rights, and maybe as well rights of religious minorities inside Islamic countries. But if we come to today's reality, if we look to the Muslim world from North Africa up to Asia, for example, we don't see what I mean, in most Islamic countries, we see the opposite. And that's why this is being used by the West as an indication of what Islam is all about. We have some cases as well where Islamic Sharia is applied. It's different than the picture you've just painted for us. Why is there so much discrepancy between what you just said and what we see in most, if not all, Islamic countries?
You see, we cannot talk in hypothetical terms. We have to find out from history to support our assertions. We know history of Europe very well. European communities disliked Jewish people and they were persecuted and executed in medieval ages. Consequently, they went to Spain where Muslims were ruling, and there Jewish community was given a warm welcome to the extent that they developed their thought, philosophy, theology, in Spain. You know well, Moses Maimonides, the famous theologian who wrote a commentary on Old Testament, on Torah, was in Spain and wrote the whole work in Arabic, not in any other language. You know, Muslims ruled in India for about 800 years, and the Hindu people were never oppressed, never converted by force, never given any kind of punishment which is questionable. And therefore, it's not just a matter of generalizations not based on history. Now let's come to contemporary situation. I'm not aware of a single situation where any religious minority has been oppressed by Muslims. On the other hand, I find Muslims in minority in India are oppressed. There have been over 7,000 violent incidents in only 1 year in the Indian environment against Muslims, against Christians. Recently, in southern India, they killed a Christian nun, and this is another indication of how others are treating Muslims and Christians who are minority there. But tell me, in Egypt, do you have a single case against Copts? Tell me in Iraq, do you have a single case against Iraqi Jews? Tell me in Morocco and Tunis, where you have Jewish communities, you have a single case of discrimination against them. No discrimination against them. They are controlling economy, they are respected, they are in academia and everywhere. So unless we have historical facts, it's not fair on our part to just make generalization and say, well, Muslims in contemporary world are facing, are doing some kind of oppression. Now you use the term Sharia. Sharia is often understood as a divine law designed for Muslims. But if you go to our literature, you will find that Sharia is based on certain objectives. We call them maqasid al-Sharia. I'll just give you one example. One objective is that you should let people live with dignity and honor. That means if honor of a Muslim is affected, it's a state obligation to go ahead and restore it. But never said honor of a Muslim. Sharia says honor of a human being. That means honor of a Christian, a Jew, a Muslim, a Chinese, a Hindu is as much important as other persons. Consequently, Sharia law never discriminates between the civil liberties of people. If theft is committed on the property of a Jew, a Christian or a Hindu, and a Muslim thief must face same consequences, and the contrary. Therefore, civil law and Sharia law is so much integrated in Islam that it cannot be called just for Muslims a divine law. Sharia law says, for example, don't play with the honor of people by defamation. If you defame, you must face consequences. Does it mean that I should not call a Muslim with some kind of allegations, but I am free to have all kinds of allegations against Jews and Christians? Not at all. Any individual in Islamic state enjoys same status. It's a wrong conception of Islam that Muslims have a set of Sharia laws for themselves and they don't care for the dignity, honor, property, life of non-Muslims. The Quran is the basis, and if Muslims believe in the Quran, they cannot act otherwise.
Doctor, there's cases in Islamic countries where, for example, Islamic fundamentalists have come out with fatwas, for example, of takfir some people. This has put us in a bad image in the rest of the world. For example, here we have situations where people's right of life is being threatened by other Muslims. This puts the whole of the Islamic world and the freedom of speech within and freedom of life under the highlight. Here we're speaking about the freedom. Islam guarantees the freedom for Muslims and non-Muslims, but at the same time, a lot of Muslims in the Islamic world are threatened sometimes with such issues, to the extent that they have to leave their countries and go live abroad for the sake of being alive. What do you have to say about that?
You see, there are three things which you have combined in one single comment. Firstly, if some Muslims have done something wrong, I am no one to condone that. And we must say very clearly that if they are doing something wrong, that is wrong. But we should not generalize on their wrong acts and say, since some Muslims have behaved unethical, Islam is unethical. We cannot say, since Catholics in Londonderry and Protestants are fighting together and killing each other indiscriminately, therefore Christianity is bad. We cannot say, since the existing Indian regime is Hindu fundamentalist, therefore Hinduism is bad as such. Now you have used also the term Muslim fundamentalist. I think this is a contradiction. A Muslim cannot be fundamentalist. Fundamentalism is essentially a Christian terminology that refers to dogmatism, anti-rationalism, and literalism. These are three pillars of fundamentalism. That you interpret Bible literally, that you accept faith as dogma, never question it, and that you should not have a desire for rational, modern kind of living, but just stay where you are traditionally, conservatism. Now tell me, where in the world Islam, based on Quran and Sunnah, calls for these three things? The Quran on every page says, shouldn't you become a qawmun yaqilun? Shouldn't you have tafakkur, tadabbur, tafheem, ta'aqqul, shaur? Not one, but so many terms that have similar meaning, calling people to think, analyze, and respond to logical and scientific approach. Similarly, I'm not aware of a single age in which Muslims were literalists. Why do you have so many tafasir? If Islam means reading the Quran in Ramadan and just listening to recitation and following it. Tafsir means you have tafasir which look into Quran for legal opinions, Qurtubi. Tafasir that deal with linguistic aspects, tafasir that deal with theological aspects, tafasir that deal...
cut you there, Mr. Yes. Doctor. We have a call. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Can I have your question, please?
My question is this. The guest has spoken about the oppression of the Muslims in India. could you please explain the creation of Bangladesh and what was it that happened from March 1973 till December 1973 by the Pakistan Army?
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll come back to the guest, to the question after we continue our talk. You were speaking about...
Yeah. Okay. I was saying that fundamentalism cannot be a part of Islamic thinking because Islam does not approve dogma, nor does it permit people to follow literally Islam, Quran. But Quran is to be understood, interpreted. That's why you have schools of thought, the Shia interpretation, the Shafi interpretation, Maliki interpretation, Hanafi interpretation, and so on and so forth. And existence of these schools of thought indicates it's not fundamentalism. It also stands, fundamentalism also stands for extremism. While the Quran says you have to keep moderation, therefore do not tie your hand to your neck, nor leave it free. Hadith says, even in prayer, make your prayer with moderation, and don't try to shout, don't try to subdue so much that you are not knowing what you are saying. A moderation in every single aspect. Therefore, to say that fundamentalism or Muslim fundamentalism is essentially a contradiction in terms. Now, the other part of your statement, where you say that we find in Muslim countries violation of these human rights, I am compelled to say that those Muslims whom you are saying have to leave their countries because of that are not because of so-called ulama, so-called fundamentalists, quote-unquote, but so-called regimes which cannot tolerate any kind of open discussion, criticism, and political expression of views. It's because of that that many Muslims had to leave their own countries and go in places where they could have more liberty and freedom of ideas. So it's not due to fundamentalism, but due to the secular environment in which secularity assumes the place of fundamentalism. Secularity thinks it alone has right to survive and others have no existence. So it becomes the most obvious example of fundamentalism. Now come back to the question that has been raised.
We'll come back to the question of our speaker after this break.
Okay.
سبعة ملايين ريال سعودي وزعتها سيتي لاين خلال مهرجان دبي للتسوق، و4 ملايين جديدة رح توزعها خلال شهر رمضان المبارك. حتى تربحوا الملايين اتصلوا بأي خدمة من خدمات سيتي لاين واشتركوا بالسحوبات يلي رح تتم ب10 ب20 وب30 رمضان. الجائزة الأولى 1,000,000 ريال سعودي، الجائزة الثانية 150,000 ريال سعودي، الجائزة الثالثة 100,000 ريال سعودي، والجائزة الرابعة 75,000 ريال سعودي. اتصلوا هلأ على فروع سيتي لاين من الإمارات، من البحرين، من مصر، من المغرب، من جميع أنحاء العالم. هلأ اتصلوا واربحوا مع سيتي لاين. سيتي لاين، مدينة الملايين.
Welcome back, dear viewers. Our discussion today on highlights is rights of Islam, and my guest speaker today is Dr. Anis Ahmad, who's the Dean of Faculty of Social Sciences at the International Islamic University in Pakistan. Dr. Anis, of course, we come back to our caller's question regarding, of course, the oppression of the Muslim minority in India, and he referred to the issue of Bangladesh.
Yeah.
So what's your insight?
You see, the problem is I don't find any parallel between what the questioner has raised. Bangladesh never presented a minority context. In terms of population, in terms of its standing, it was a province of Pakistan which had a majority of population. Therefore, it was not a matter of a minority which is oppressed. On the other hand, it was a matter of political mismanagement, political blunders, political incapability of rulers and not recognizing the norms of civility. That led to that pathetic crisis, ultimately dividing the country in two. Now, if people who were ruling were not aware of the needs and feeling of the people of Bangladesh, which was at that time East Pakistan, and they disregarded continuously their needs and demands, then it was a political blunder. Nothing to do with Islam at all. In Pakistan, indeed, the country was created based on Islam. And if I can say with confidence that even Bangladesh today, with all its claims for secularity in terms of constitution, consists of a largest Muslim population in that part. And those Muslims are perhaps better Muslims than many West Pakistanis or Pakistanis. So it does not relate directly with Islamic principles, but it was essentially a matter of mismanagement and disregard of political rights of people in that province at that time, which was anyhow utilized and motivated by the Indian regime. They directly intervened, and Mukti Bahini, their trained people, went there and agitated and ultimately helped in its cessation. So it's not a simple matter that requires a separate discussion with full analysis of the situation.
Definitely. Moving away from the situation in Bangladesh, I wanted to address the issue of women's rights in Islam.
Please.
We said, and we just spoke about how Islam guarantees the rights of every individual, Muslims and non-Muslims. And of course, within this falls the females, the women. And it seems that women's rights in Islam seems to be a debatable issue, which the West tends to always use as a way to show that Islam is unequal when it comes to treating the males and the females, and some Muslims complain of discrimination and not being treated fairly. Recently we saw the example of how the Western media exploited the issue of women in Afghanistan, how they were being mistreated, and how when Islam is properly made and formed into an Islamic state, this is what women end up with: no education inside their home, they're not allowed to move, they're not allowed to pursue their careers in life. What is the real situation of women's rights in Islam?
Thank you very much. You see, the issue is quite complex again. The Quran begins by telling us in Surah Al-Ahzab that believing men and believing women, those who submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, offer their dues and prayers and fasts, men and women, all of them have been promised reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It never said the reward for men is twice the reward of women. Secondly, when it talks about a number of other situations, it provides a reason and rationale for treating men and women slightly differently. It never tries to apologize for it, but tells us very openly and plainly. The reason is equality, taken by some people as sacrosanct, is not always just. Islam stands for justice and not for equality. Justice means if women deserve to have much more than men, they must get. Why equal? Why not more? Therefore, Islam has taken a route which is different. Let's take it concretely. People think that in the law of evidence, women are given half the share of men. Therefore, they quote Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 282, where it said, when you are writing a document dealing with some commercial matters, call from your people 2 males. If you don't find 2 males, get 1 male and 2 females, in order, if one forgets, other may remind. Now they take this ayah of Surah Al-Baqarah, 2nd chapter, and they say, since it has said, take 1 male and 2 females, therefore the evidence of female is half.
There's also the issue of inheritance as well, where they say...
Don't rush, we'll come to it, just take it easy. Okay, so when the Quran has said it, it also calls us to analyze and think. Take the situation. You have done a deal of $20 billion, and you have a male and 2 females. One female for some reason is confused. You have only one male and one female in final analysis, and these two are conclusive. The statement of the Quran does not say that unless both of them are sound and available, you will not accept it. It only said, take two in order if one of them. Now, why didn't it say about men same thing? Simple reason.
We have a call, doctor. We'll just take the call. Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Yes.
Assalamualaikum, I'm Shabina Shahanawaz.
Yes. Can I have a question, please?
Yes. Recently, Imam Hamza came to Bahrain.
Yes.
And he just said that a religious extreme alien to Islam. And he said that Islam stands for moderation. Can Mr. Anis correct it, please?
Can you repeat your question, please?
Dr. Imam
Hamza Yusuf.
Imam Hamza said that religious extremism alien to Islam. In the newspaper it just came. And he says that Islam stands for moderation.
So you want a clarification with regard to that?
Yeah, I want to clear it.
All right. Thank you.
Welcome.
I think, doctor, we already clarified about Islam not being...
we said even in prayers it wants moderation. In spending it wants moderation. In everything Islam stands for moderation and balance and not for extremism. That's what is the meaning of Islam as such.
We have another caller. Sorry, doctor, we have another caller. Omar, hello? Hello?
Hello.
Yes, Omar, can I have a question?
I just wanted to say about the honorable speaker is talking about the fate of minorities in India. What about the way Muhajirs are being treated in his own country, I mean in Pakistan?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for the question. I think it's turning into a political debate.
No problem.
How
no
about
problem.
the situation? The caller was speaking about the Muhajirin in Pakistan, how they're being treated there.
Well, so far as I find in Pakistan, when Pakistan came into existence, a good number of people migrated from India, various parts of India, and they settled in Pakistan. And since they settled in Pakistan, they became citizens of Pakistan. And just as in Medina, once Muhajir and Ansar came and they became one ummah, there was no more a separate treatment for people.
From Mecca or Medina, they were both
No
treated
difference at all. They were treated as citizens of the country. And that's why you find in Pakistan, it is very strange to call someone Muhajir when you are already there for over 54 years as citizens of a country who are living there, enjoying their rights, playing their role in economy, in political life, everywhere. I'm not aware of any discrimination against Muhajirin, so-called Muhajirin in Pakistan. I married myself from East Punjab, and I don't think I have faced any problems in Pakistan or elsewhere because I'm a Muhajir. Now, coming back to the point I was dealing with, if you analyze Quranic ayah, you will find it tells us about inheritance that male child will get twice the share of female child. Let's assume a person leaves behind an apple pie and has a wife, a son, and 2 daughters. The sacred law of equality says, divide it in 4 pieces, give it to them, and that's it.
That's right.
Islamic law says, don't divide in 4 pieces and forget about the future, but take the future in consideration. This male child who has to assume responsibility as head of family has an obligation to make sure his mother and sisters get proper care in terms of medical care, in terms of housing, in terms of dress, in terms of food, in terms of anything they need. And he is responsible for it. And he cannot ask them to surrender their share because he is taking care of them. Therefore, the Quran says, when you are making this person responsible for all these aspects, then just give him twice the share of the girl so he has capacity. Or else, it's a mockery to say, you do all these things, but we give you same share. Is that justice?
But
Honesty and fairness?
Dr. Anis, you're speaking about the situation when there was the Islamic states.
Yes.
Nowadays what we see is the male who still have this privilege, or according to the Islamic law, the inheritance. But they're not carrying out their responsibilities. For example, we find that the male, the brother, for example, in your case, maybe he doesn't take care of his mother and sisters. So does the Islamic law still applies with the case of the inheritance? Or if he's not to take responsibility for them, then we have to use the first rule, which is divide equally among all four. If he renounces this responsibility, does it change then? Is Islamic law flexible in that matter?
You see, Islamic law is just like discovery of an antibiotic or penicillin, which tells us that if you use it, it will cure your problem. If you don't use it, then don't blame Islam. Islamic law has universal application, and therefore, if some people don't use it, we cannot say throw away Islamic law. On the other hand, we need to educate them, legislate in your country things which will make life much easy for people who are neglected. When we implement Islamic law properly, then we will have better security of people. Instead of applying Islamic law, since X is not fulfilling obligations, we say, let's get rid of Islam. It is ridiculous. Just like you don't observe rules of health which are there, but you say, let's do away with rules of health, let me kill myself by way of all kind of junk food. That is ridiculous, irrational. If we don't accept that in our everyday life, why with Islam? Islam has given certain principles that need to be applied with cool mind, with understanding, with sacrifice, with state involvement, with communities involvement. And when you do all these things, then you will not be able to face that crisis which we are facing today. The reason is we have left the Islamic approach toward family and introduced the concept of a nuclear family where individualism becomes the main purpose. Individual should get all benefits and not the family. Islamic approach is integrative, is collective, is human, is based on human rights. The Quran says you have a right to go and eat in the house of your parent, your cousin, your aunt, your uncle. You just go and eat. That means you have a right, not just a kind of charity on their part, that you first pick up telephone and tell them, sir, I plan to visit you after 2 weeks. Is it okay if I come and eat with you? No, it is right. That means it's an extended structure, not just confined to one person who is individual and who is just looking for his own benefits. Islamic family is something different than what we find in many cases today in even Muslim countries, where because of secularity we have lost that ethics of family, which is the basis of any meaningful society.
We have another call. Nicole, hello?
Hello.
Yes, hello, Nicole.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to ask the doctor a question concerning the issue of discrimination.
Go ahead.
I respect the fact that in the vast majority of Islamic states there's no institutional discrimination. But I wanted to ask why, if Islam is devoid of discrimination, why I find, as a Christian woman, when I walk down the street in Bahrain, I find I get disrespect from young men, Bahraini, Saudi, Qatari, whoever, simply because I'm not wearing hijab.
But that is not always the case, is it?
No, not always the case, but if these boys are being raised properly...
So this could be a minority. I mean, in every country you have people, for example, who are the bad and the good, as they say. But generally speaking, you do not get this attitude from the general public in Bahrain.
No, not from the general public.
Okay, well, I'll forward the question to Dr. Anis. We'll see his opinion. Doctor, for example, our caller just spoke about Christian women in Islamic countries, for example, and how young men might treat them because they're not Muslims, maybe to take advantage of the situation and to look down upon them because they're not Muslims. This, I think, falls within the framework of treating the religious minorities.
No, it's not a matter of minority or majority, it's a matter of teenage phobia, which you find more dominant in the West, and because of its influence visible in some parts of Muslim world. You find young people who have been separated from their culture, from their values because of secular education. When they find some women who are from the western part, they think that they can take liberty in going and talking to them and suggesting certain things which they think are permissible for Western ladies. I have lived in the West and I have found that Western ladies have rigorous ethical conduct. Not all of them, few of them may have some problems, but majority of them live by ethical standards, and they don't want to be insulted, they don't want to be gazed continuously in their face, they don't want to be addressed in rather frank manner. And therefore, it's not a matter of Islam, it's a matter of secularity which is creeping in, and because of that, a certain class and segment of Muslim society among youth who are influenced by Western liberalism, Western kind of manners, they misunderstand the situation, they are unable to read the culture, but they only see the superficial aspect of culture, and that's why they act in that manner. And it's not confined to any space, space and time. You go anywhere in the world, you have same kind of teenage culture that leads to this kind of situation.
We have another caller, Tahir. Hello? Hello, Tahir?
Doctor, my question is about the Islamic fundamentalists.
Okay.
The Kashmiri people who are fighting in Indian Kashmir for freedom, they are fundamentalists or the freedom fighters?
All right. Thank you, Tahir. We coming to the... We'll take the caller's question later because we are going to speak about Islam and the rights in the state of war. But let's finish with the women issue. Other issues, Doctor, which seems to always bother women activists in the West about the situation in Islam is education for Islamic women and the marriage issue.
Okay.
Some families force their women, their girls, to marry somebody they don't want. And the third thing is, of course, the right in Islam for men to marry for women.
Sure.
So these seem to be three things which is always being discussed by the West against Islam.
Well,
What's your justification?
Let's take the first point first. You know, Islam essentially is a culture of knowledge. First revelation comes and says, read in the name of Allah, who taught you with pen, taught you what you knew not. And therefore, the first revelation put the block for constructing a new culture of knowledge. It said very clearly that you should make a prayer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the words of Rabbi zidni ilma. And that is not for males, it's for all believers. It said that believers are persons who separate right from wrong, and did not say it's for male to go ahead and do it. But every Muslim, male and female, has to develop a capacity to distinguish between what is ma'ruf and munkar, halal and haram, right and wrong. Therefore, it encouraged from day one education at every level. So you find among the Sahabiyat, there were some who were minarets of knowledge, like Sayyidah Aisha. You find historically that she left behind a great resource of hadith and fiqh and tafsir. To the extent, scholars say, about 1/3 of our literature comes from her. Now, if that is how Islam presented the role of women, it will be difficult to say that it does not welcome education for them. Why do we have this problem? The problem is that when Muslim countries were colonized by European powers, and they came up with their recipe of education to transform them, their mind and soul, to leave their appearance as Muslims, but their hearts and minds completely sold to secular ideas. In that context, many Muslim families felt, if we send out our girls to that kind of education, we will harm our future generations. Therefore, they became quite apprehensive, they became quite less interested in doing that. That means it was colonialism which discouraged girls to get education in Islam at all. When countries have liberated themselves, you find in every Muslim country, female literacy has jumped. In Gulf, for example, you have female literacy compatible with any part of the world. In Malaysia, you have about 87% literacy of male and female both. In Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, you have highest rate of literacy for women. Now, in Jordan, you have over 80% literacy. Now, these figures are given to us by UN agencies, not by Muslims. And these figures speak for literacy of women. Definitely, in some parts of the world, they may have been suppressed for social reasons, economic reasons, and other considerations. If you have education as a commodity, and if people go out to purchase it with a high price tag, a family which has less resources cannot afford everyone to get education. There are many reasons, not one, because of which female education may be slightly low in many parts of the world. So it cannot be put on Islam as its as a responsibility, but I think others are responsible for it and not just Islam.
How about, for example, the issue about the man marrying for and women being forced to marry men who they don't want?
A Sahabiya comes to Prophet, peace be upon him, and says that my father has married me to a person without my consent. And Prophet said, I free you from that person. After that she said, I just came to get my right confirmed, but now I tell you, I will not free myself from him, I will stay with him. That means that Prophet himself was not insisting. However, the reason Muslim jurists are insisting, and I think in that respect, three major Sunni schools of thought unanimously believe that parents have right to marry their girls who are not married earlier. But if a lady is married, then all jurists agree for her second marriage, if she is divorced or widowed, then she does not have to ask her parents or elders to intervene. She can decide for herself, and on that you have unanimous view of fuqaha. Now the reason is that when you are in that kind of psychological tension, then Islam is of the view that for the benefit of the future of that young girl who has no idea about realities of life but is living in a kind of romantic world, a world of imagination, perhaps parents and elders who are a bit detached, they can look and find out dispassionately what's good for her. That's why they give this right to them. Otherwise, it's not a matter of a kind of legal compulsion or deprivation. Now, you said about more than one wife. The Quran is very clear and tells us that if you want to have more than one wife, you have a privilege, but not a compulsion, not that you must have it. Reasons are obvious. In some situations, till the day of judgment, when world comes to an end, if, for example, we find a situation where female population demographically is more than men, should we say that since there is a sacrosanct law, one man, one wife, these women have no right to live a family, and they should just go to 42nd Street in New York? No, that's not Islam. Islam is very simple. It says, since it is universal and till eternity solve problems, therefore must think of eventualities. Those could be war. Say, for example, in Afghanistan, you find in last 20 years, a large number of men have been killed. Now, if they have their wives who are widows, if there are girls who do not find young people, what should they do? If they want to stay in Afghanistan and someone who is already married offers a hand to this person, should this person say, no, I believe in one man, one wife, I will not be second wife? Other question is that Islam gives human right to a lady as well as to a male. A lady has a human right to refuse to be a second wife. But if she wants to be a second wife, who can deny her this right?
But if she refuses to be a second wife, she can be divorced?
Oh, definitely, if she doesn't want to be a second wife, no one can compel her to be a second wife. But if she, out of her own free will, says, I know you have a wife, you are a married person, but if you like me and I like you, I can be a second wife. Stay in a separate home or same home. If she is exercising this right herself, then does UN have a veto right for that? On what basis? It's a human right given to her. No one can deny this right to her if she wants, but no one can compel her that you must become a second wife. No one can compel.
We have callers. Hello? Hello, good evening. Hello?
Yes, please.
Yeah, can I have a question, please?
It's kind of a question and a remark at the same time.
Go ahead.
I guess it's a fact to say that since September 11th, the Islamic world has been attacked per se in terms of faith, values, traditions, and what we hold as sacred and precious. And I really, praise and commend you for your efforts in trying to work in the educational front.
Thank you.
Meaning, propagating the proper picture about Islam in terms of its stand towards many issues, including the issues.
Can I have a question, please?
Okay. The issues. I'm really impressed by the level of knowledge exhibited by your speaker, and I really want to take this level of knowledge to a higher level. Can intellectuals like your speaker and get together to form some kind of an action group, okay, that can put a plan to counter and react to what's happening worldwide.
Okay.
There are many, let's say, countries, for example, that are taking this incident as an opportunity to suppress Muslims. There are many people who are trying to use this situation to worsen the image of Islam. And I really, can we put the knowledge of our scholar to the benefit of the whole nation at large?
All right, thank you. We have another call. Hello? Hello? I think we've lost the call. We'll come back to our speaker's question. I'd like to move. We have the caller. Hello?
Hi, good evening. My name is Ranga. How are you?
Yes, fine. Can I have a question, please?
Yeah, my question, I'll make it quick.
Please.
I don't belong to Islam. I belong to some other religion. You would have known it by my name.
Okay.
We believe in one God. We believe in most of the tenacities which are there, which are being preached by Islam. But is it essential that I should convert myself to Islam? And what does Islam say about this particular situation?
All right.
That's the question.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
I think we have another caller as well. Hello? We've lost the call. All right, Dr. Anis, of course, I'll start with the last question of our caller. People who are not from, who do not follow the faith of Islam, other religions, not even religions of the book, maybe Buddhism, Confucianism, Hinduism, but they adhere to the same moral principles which Islam calls for, to be honest, to be just, to help others. If the person from other faiths is following the practices of Islam, but he's not declared himself as a Muslim, does Islam guarantee his rights, and should he go into Islam if he still practices these other ethics and principles?
Thank you very much. You see, there are two aspects of the question. One is when X, who is not a Muslim but a good human being, wants to be charitable, fair, honest, and observes all ethical principles, would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala disregard these good acts in the day of judgment? The Quran says, those from people of the book who do good deeds, amal salih, they don't have to have any kind of fear. We don't know what kind of reward they will get or what will be their situation. That's all the Quran says about them. Now, the Quran also tells us that why they do it. They behave ethically because, according to Quran, every human being born in this world is born on nature of Islam. Therefore, Hadith says all human beings are born Muslims. They follow the law of nature made by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you take that child who has not yet been baptized or who has not confessed a faith and just leave this child on nature, then this child will act more honest, more fair, more loyal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You will find quite often when you tell your child, tell the caller, I'm not at home. Then the child picks up phone and tells, Baba says, I'm not at home. This is nature, truth. It's we who corrupt our kids by telling them how to lie. So Islam says everyone who is born on this pure nature. That's why people who may not have confessed Islam are undeclared Muslims. Now, Islam is not a matter of undeclared Islam. It's also a matter of conscious Islam. Therefore, when we say consciously that we declare Allah alone is mankind's creator, Prophet, peace be upon him, is final messenger, with all responsibility and consciousness, then we become a Muslim by way of Shahada. Earlier, we are by way of our taqween, by way of our constitution, which is already with every human being. Hadith says that every child is born Muslim. It's parents who make him a Jew or Christian environment. Therefore, our caller, I will appreciate his very frank question. I think he is, by all definitions, a born Muslim. Now, he needs to use his wisdom, analyze, read the Quran, read life of the Prophet, and if he feels that Quran provides correct principles for humanity, then consciously, not unconsciously, become Muslim.
We have another caller. Hello, Shala. Hello?
Yes, I'm there.
Yeah, can I have a question, please?
Yes, I would like to ask this caller about, kind of taking him back to what he was discussing about women, getting married, for husbands or something like that.
Okay.
Now, the question is, what is the significance of a Muslim man marrying a non-Muslim, and a Muslim woman cannot marry a non-Muslim man? I mean, what's the significance in Islam?
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
If we have to answer this question, Doctor, about the situation where a Muslim man is allowed to marry a non-Muslim, but vice versa is not allowed. Why is that?
You see, Islam permits only people of the book. From them, girls can marry a Muslim. That means a Jewish Christian girl can become wife of a Muslim male, but not the contrary. Reasons are obvious. Islam is not a matter of legalized living, but it's a matter of family. And family means that whoever is head of family is responsible for upbringing, training, and proper cultivation of values in children. And normally, when you have head of family as male, and the values of that person is given to those children who are named after him, then there are more chances of them to be better human beings. Although the mother of their children may not subscribe to those ideas, but the children, because of their parentage, have better chances of becoming better human beings by becoming Muslims. Now, if it's contrary, then a male who is Christian, who is Jew, or whatever it is, when he has a wife who is Muslim, then the child is going to be definitely belonging to the faith of father or not only his mother. Keeping in view this situation, which is social, psychological, human, not just legal, Islam has gone to suggest that Muslim males can marry, but not the contrary.
Doctor, with regard to Islam and the rights in war, can you shed some light on how does Islam and Muslims should adhere to certain rights during war? For example, if they invade a country or they're at war with another army, should they, when they enter a country, should they kill the children, the women, and so forth? Because a lot of people say that Islam entered a lot of countries in the world by the sword, and Muslims are by nature vicious people who just kill. What's your opinion about that?
You see, it has again several aspects. Firstly, Prophet, peace be upon him, whenever he sent an army, he told them clearly, you are not going to kill people who are not fighting with you. You are not going to destroy plants and trees around. Environment conscious. You're not going to kill their animals. Don't destroy their properties. But you are going to fight only those who will fight with you. Therefore, Islamic Charter of Humanity is very clear, obvious, and declared. No hidden agenda, but very clear. Quran tells us very clear in many places that you are not supposed to fight with those persons who are involved in their prayers. Not supposed to kill women and children. You see, Islamic teachings are very much confused by people because they do not know true Islam. If they find a Jewish attack on Sabra and Shatila, then they think it's a matter of security of the Israel. But if they find somewhere a Muslim for some reason uses a bomb in a school van, which I can never condone. Islam never condones that. They take it, magnify it, generalize it and say Islam means killing school children. Now civilian life and people who are not part of that struggle cannot be killed unjustified even by Muslims who are affected, who are oppressed, who are denied their human rights. They need to fight with the ethics Islam has given, and therefore you find when the Hamas began, can we provide one single evidence they ever used gun? It was rock. It was non-violent movement.
But now, Doctor, for example, what's happening is that there are suicide bomb attacks or martyrdom operations happening inside Israel. Recently, there were 2 operations, and quickly I want your answer because time's running out. They've used bombs, they're killing civilians. What is the situation of Islam with regard to this?
Islam does not permit killing civilians unjustifiably. Islam wants people to go and fight for their cause, firm on that, without compromise, but does not permit people to go and kill innocent persons.
Well, thank you, Dr. Anis. We've run out of time. Our dear viewers, we thank you for being with us. We hope that in this episode we were able to shed some light on the rights of Islam. The topic is, of course, very immense. There's a lot to speak about, but time's run out. We hope to see you next week for another episode of Highlights. Until next week, goodbye.
Thank you.